What is up, everybody out there in podcast land? It is time for the latest and the greatest episode of your favorite politically incorrect sports commentary podcast. That's right, it is time for yet another stupendous, spectacular, fantastic edition of Sports Frenzy 2.0. I'm the Maestro Kevin Crane. I am flying solo this week as your Uncle Dave, the conquistador, Dave Height, celebrates yet another year of marriage. Yuck. Sorry. Not a comment on his marriage. Comment on marriage in general. Yes, I am a bitter man. So he is off on some kind of a romantic getaway, but he will be back next week. Of course, this would be the opposite of a romantic getaway. He'll be back next week for Sports Frenzy 2.0. But for now, you're stuck with me. Probably going to have a little bit of a shorter episode this week, not just because your Uncle Dave is not here, but because this is kind of a slow week in the world of sports. Some would debate that. Some would argue that with me. But then again, we've said this for years here on this podcast. We are not huge NBA fans. So the NBA is really stealing the spotlight this week, and that's what we're going to start off with. So first and foremost, we have to congratulate. And I don't want to make that sound like it's a chore. We are congratulating the Oklahoma City Thunder for winning their first title. People in Seattle might dispute that a little bit. But in terms of them being in Oklahoma City, this is their very first title as they beat the Indiana Pacers 103-91 in Game 7. And who would have thought this series, when it started out, was going to go 7 games? Then we also have to look at the fact that, is this title tainted a little bit? No, not because of referees, but because of injury. Tyrese Halliburton, of course, star player for the Indiana Pacers, was having calf issues for a couple games leading into Game 7. Worst case scenario happens, tears his Achilles. The Pacers hung in there for a while, did the best they possibly could, but in the second half, specifically the third quarter, they just, without their star, were no match for the Thunder. So in that respect, I don't think tainted is the right word. That's really insulting what the Thunder have done and what they've accomplished this year. And by all the stats, all the numbers, even looking back historically, what this team accomplished and what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander accomplished individually, rarefied air. Rarefied air. But the Pacers were winning Game 7 at halftime without Tyrese Halliburton. What would have happened if he had stayed healthy? It's a valid question. And again, we're not trying to take anything away from the Thunder. We're not putting an asterisk next to their names, their team name in the record books because of this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is, and you can extend this all the way back through the playoffs, specifically in the Eastern Conference. Would the Celtics have had a shot at getting by the Knicks if Jason Tatum doesn't blow out his Achilles? What would the Bucks have looked like if Damian Lillard had not blown out his Achilles? So a lot of what ifs, especially again when it comes to the teams in the Eastern Conference. And that, of course, means next season with those 3 injuries I just reported, that we, of course, all know about. But that means the Eastern Conference is open for business, wide open. I don't necessarily agree with the early odds. Of course, I am biased because I am an Orlando Magic fan, and I think the trade for Desmond Bane firmly puts them in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference if they stay healthy. Health issues bit them last year, and that's why they ended up finishing at 500 for the regular season, is because they went without Paolo Banchero for months. They went without Franz Wagner for months. They went without Jalen Suggs for months. And that's part of the game. Basketball, football, baseball, whatever game we're talking about. But odds, you would think, would say the Magic should have a pretty reasonable shot of staying healthy this year. The injuries that they dealt with last year are not lingering issues, not knee issues, really, not calf issues leading to Achilles issues. At least when we're talking about your top 2 players, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, those were oblique issues. But again, the landscape of the Eastern Conference is now fascinating. And we have tonight, as we record here on June the 25th, 2025, we have the NBA draft tonight and tomorrow night. So next week we will have our full recap of everything and anything that happened during the 2 nights of the NBA draft. We have already had a lot of action preceding the draft. Of course, I just mentioned the Orlando Magic and their acquisition of Desmond Bane. We talked about that last week, making up for a terrible signing the year before with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They did not need a defensive specialist. They needed more help behind the 3-point line, and now they have it. Had to give up a lot of first-round picks, but that's fine. The Knicks are still whole. Still the same team that got beat by the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they emerged unscathed in terms of their athletes, in terms of their health. But who is going to be their head coach? They are just a few hours away. As I mentioned, the draft is coming up very soon tonight. They are just a few hours away from having to start to reshape and mold their roster for the 2025-2026 season, and they don't have a head coach there to help them do it. Now, of course, given where they would be picking, it's not that big of a deal. But still, you would like to have the head coach in place when you get to the NBA draft. Granted, it's a quick turnaround, a very, very quick turnaround from the end of the NBA Finals to the NBA draft, but the Knicks have had more than ample time, since they were not involved in the finals, to get this figured out. And they still haven't. This is why I'm not as high on the Knicks. This is why I don't like the odds that I'm seeing. If the Cleveland Cavaliers stay intact, I would give them the edge. Pacers, without Halliburton, probably not going to do much better than, a 6 seed or get into the play-in portion of the tournament. The Celtics may be a little bit better without Jason Tatum, but now the Celtics have had to make some drastic moves here over the past week to get under this punitive second apron, is what they call it. Basically, a level of salary cap tax that they do not want to even think about dealing with. So, they have traded Drew Holiday back to Portland, where Holiday used to play, and they have traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks. And this has given them a ton of relief. Well over $100 million in cap tax relief. And Brad Stevens is not a stupid man. The Celtics organization is not stupid. They went from Danny Ainge to Brad Stevens. They know what they're doing. They're hiring the right people. Brilliant basketball minds. And losing Drew Holiday and losing Kristaps Porzingis doesn't really hurt them all that much. And like I said, they'll probably still be a playoff team, probably a number 5 seed, a number 6 seed next year. And then if they somehow get Jason Tatum back before the start of the playoffs, then things get really interesting. So you've got this jumbled mess here in the East. The Knicks at least are healthy, but they don't have a leader. The Cavs are healthy. They're intact. But after their poor showing in the playoffs this year, there are doubts. You have the up-and-coming Orlando Magic. You have the injured Pacers. You have the injured Celtics. You have the injured Bucks. And of course, as I mentioned, next week with your Uncle Dave, we will review all of the events surrounding the draft. I've given you an update within a couple hours of the start of the draft. We all know Cooper Flagg will go number 1 to the Dallas Mavericks. But there are all sorts of crazy rumors out there about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Is he going to get traded? There are even, I don't think it'll happen now, but there was even a hint coming from the executives with the Nuggets that they might be open in the future to trading Nikola Jokic, which boggles my mind. Absolutely boggles my mind. But this is the NBA that we have now. The shifting of parts and pieces. You're trying to get these 6, 7, 8, 10 guys together who can just make magic. No, not the Orlando Magic. I can hope. And then, of course, the poster child for this new age of the NBA is Kevin Durant, along with, yes, LeBron James. Force trades. Be disgruntled. Try any way you can to build on your legacy, even if it kind of deteriorates and hurts your legacy by doing so. Kevin Durant has been traded to the Houston Rockets. The Phoenix Suns get back Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, a first-round pick in the draft tonight, and then 5 second-round picks. Here's my problem, is again, not an NBA expert. I follow it, but I don't watch it. I'm not devoted to it like a lot of you out there are. I don't like these types of players. I don't like James Harden. I don't like LeBron James. I don't like Kevin Durant, where they're constantly on the move trying to figure out where somebody will kiss their asses and build them a super team so they can grab another ring in hopes that they will somehow, some way be compared to Michael Jordan, which none of them will ever be compared to MJ, because none of them are even in the same arena, talent-wise, achievement-wise, as Michael Jordan. And yes, you LeBron James fans out there, you can kiss my ass. He's a compiler. He's a compiler. You want to sit there and go, oh, he's the all-time leader in points, he's the all-time leader in this. He played a lot longer than Michael Jordan did. And you guys all want to celebrate that. Ooh, availability. That's a very, very key component to being a winner. Uh-huh. Yeah, look at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Look at the Baseball Hall of Fame and all the compilers like Scott Rowland and Todd Helton, who are in the Baseball Hall of Fame, who couldn't win jack shit. Yes, LeBron has 4 rings, but he's had to do it with 3 different teams. And Kevin Durant's only got 2. And the common denominator is both of those players had to glom on to other superstars in order to get their rings. I've always said the only legitimate title I believe LeBron James should be acknowledged for is when he went back to Cleveland. I legitimately felt like he wanted to bring a title to that city. He knew it was not going to be as easy as it was with the Heat, even though he did his stupid press conference announcing he was bringing his talents to South Beach, and not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. Well, you should have stopped at 2, because that's all you got with the Heat, with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Do I think Kevin Durant makes the Rockets better? Sure. What is it going to do for the chemistry of that team when you've got a lot of young superstars on that squad? Kevin Durant has never struck me as a leader. Even LeBron James, I can say at times, has shown leadership qualities and leadership tendencies. James Harden? No. Kevin Durant? No. Now, at least you've got a somewhat strong head coach with the Rockets in Ime Udoka, so we will see how this plays out. Again, I am not liking the odds as everybody goes crazy and, they go into panic mode and they, ooh, this is awesome, this is new, this is great. Slow your roll. You better be very careful in the West, because the Thunder, despite what I said about the Pacers pushing them to a Game 7, the Thunder are for real. The Thunder are a cohesive unit that could definitely rattle off 2 or 3 more titles. So once again, I will keep you updated throughout this podcast, and then next week we will cover any last-minute trades, significant movement up and down the draft board. Although it's not like the NFL draft. You guys know this. It's just not. Whereas everybody is fixated with the NFL draft because it doesn't matter if you're talking a first-round pick, a second-round pick, even a third-round pick can become an immediate starter and make an immediate difference on your team in the NFL. In basketball, that is much more rare. And usually outside of the first 2 or 3 picks, then it's a crapshoot. Now, going back to the finals here for just a second, all the doom and gloom, of course, we heard about, oh, nobody's going to want to watch this. Nobody wants to watch the Pacers and the Thunder. Well, overall, I could say you were right. Overall, lowest rated finals series, average viewership in well over a decade. Almost close to 2, I believe. However, you get a game 7, and all of a sudden all this small market bullshit goes away. Because game 7 averaged 16.4 million viewers. And that was the best rating for any game in any finals in the last 6 years. So, glass half empty, glass half full. You be the judge. You make the call. To me personally, I thought it was great finals. Lots of storylines. Wouldn't mind seeing it again, but we won't because of the injury to Tyrese Halliburton. And I would be remiss if I did not once again congratulate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as he won the MVP of the NBA Finals. And yes, again, he's in that rarefied air as he won the Finals MVP and he won the regular season MVP, among many, many other accomplishments. You can literally drive yourself crazy with all these stats and figures and who accomplished what and what the team accomplished. I try not to go too crazy with that stuff. I will give you as much information as I can without geeking out. Let's put it that way. Now, one more note before we move on. Of course, Dallas, what a bizarre, wild, and wacky ride it's been over the last few months for the Dallas Mavericks. And there are plenty of people, myself included, that still think the draft is fixed. That we still think that there was some kind of under-the-table agreement to send Luka Doncic to the Lakers and then wink, wink, even though your odds are infinitesimal, we'll find a way to give you guys, Dallas, the number 1 pick. Will give you Cooper Flagg. Because we've got to do something to make the Lakers relevant and make LeBron relevant before he calls it quits. Oh, by the way, have you guys heard anything about Bronny lately? Me neither. So now you've got this potential resurgence already with the Dallas Mavericks. Cooper Flagg's going to need some time. He's still very, very young. You have Anthony Davis, who should be good to go to start the 2025-2026 campaign. You've got a lot of good bench players, role players, and then eventually, probably towards the end of the season, you will get Kyrie Irving back. Now, Kyrie Irving has just reworked his deal, agreed to an extension. Yes, the money is ridiculous. It's fucking crazy in the NBA. We all know this. That's why the Celtics had to go nuclear to try to ditch as much salary as they possibly could. Kyrie Irving is getting a 3-year, $119 million extension with the Dallas Mavericks. Yes, that is just short of $40 million a year. So the Mavericks, again, conspiracy theorists like me, can point to this, point to that. Now that everything has been said and done, and again, Cooper Flagg in a few hours will be a member of the Dallas Mavericks. the Mavericks are going to be a factor in the West now for the next few years. Now they're going to have to do some different things a couple years down the road. This is not like the Thunder, where the Thunder are set and locked in for the long term with who they've got. They're young, brilliant general manager who set this up perfectly, made the right moves, made the right trades throughout the last decade and a half to set this team up. The Mavericks it's going to be a little more difficult for them because even though they're going to have Cooper Flag, who knows how much longer Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis really have. So they're going to have to, down the road, move some pieces around. You're probably going to see them do some things similar to what we're seeing with the Celtics right now. But again, next week, full recap on the NBA draft. Then, of course, Wednesday and Thursday, tonight and tomorrow, as we tape again here on June the 25th, the NBA draft, and then immediately after that, Friday and Saturday, is the NHL draft. And I know even less about the NHL draft than I do about the NBA draft. Yes, I can go back and talk about how college sports have just imploded, and there was a time when basketball players actually stuck around for 3 or 4 years in the college ranks where you would learn about a multitude of players across the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten. But that, of course, does not apply anymore. Cooper Flag, a one and done. So don't expect me to give you any kind of a scouting report on what's going to happen with the NHL draft this coming weekend. What we'll do is, of course, we'll highlight the top couple picks next week, and then we'll get your Uncle Dave's view on what the Blackhawks did, because he does follow the Blackhawks religiously. Now, the Blackhawks are making some moves. Once again, I have to do this as a public service because he's not here. The Blackhawks acquire Andrei Burakovsky. He's a forward. He's a left wing. They get him from the Seattle Kraken. And then, with health issues possibly in the rearview mirror, Blackhawks legend Jonathan Toews has signed with the Winnipeg Jets. And then we did have an announcement of the new class for the NHL Hall of Fame, or the Hockey Hall of Fame. 3 very, very big names that even I know. Zdeno Chara, hell of an enforcer. Again, even I know that. Alexander Mogilny, and then once again referencing the Blackhawks and their 3 championships here in the current century, Duncan Keith is also going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Little bit of football news for you, just a little bit. Again, this is one of the few times during the year where the NFL is kind of down. Everything is set in stone. We still have a couple free agents floating around out there. I'd still like to know where Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen are going to wind up. But everybody's kind of in camp right now. We're still a month out from actually playing preseason games. We do have a retirement to report. C.J. Mosley, linebacker, has called it quits. And then, of course, we've got Aaron Rodgers doing what Aaron Rodgers does and getting in front of a microphone and talking about how he doesn't want people to dig into his personal life. What an absolute jackass this guy is. Seriously. He is the ultimate drama queen. And I usually respect the Pittsburgh Steelers. I usually admire them for what they do and how they handle their business. But boy, they've made a deal with the devil here. Because he's already starting up with his, oh, woe is me, poor, poor, pitiful me. You won't leave me alone. You won't let me be. Yet he's the guy that authorizes a Netflix documentary about him and his personal life. This is the guy who, of course, is more than happy to cash checks to show up every week and talk about, yes, his life on the Pat McAfee show. But now he's going, oh, I really would appreciate it if you would just give me some space and leave me alone. Shut up, Aaron. And maybe this is it. This is probably it for me. Can we all please hope to fucking God that it is? Because your act has worn so thin. It's ridiculous. And of course, you look at the schedule for the Steelers this year, and it all plays out perfectly for the Drama King. I could have called him the Drama Queen. Would have been funner. Would have made me a little happier, but no. You know, he's got the Packers on the schedule. He's got the Jets week 1, and then he's got the Chicago Bears. In addition to, of course, all the traditional AFC North rivalries with the Bengals and the Ravens, and the Browns. But yeah, the sooner Aaron Rodgers goes away, the better. Let's hope some of these young quarterbacks ascend a little bit this year. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I'm talking about you, Caleb Williams. And we can throw Drake May in there as well. Maybe Jackson Dart with the Giants. Make us forget this idiot Aaron Rodgers forever and ever. Until, of course, he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame and the spotlight is back on him again. And he can bask in the glory of all the adulation. Where's my bucket? I need to puke. On the college front, I am going to recuse myself from this particular topic because, of course, I am a Miami Hurricanes fan. And yes, this does involve the Miami Hurricanes football program. But as if it wasn't enough with all the changes and the landscape altering lawsuits and decisions that have been made over the last couple years, now we have yet another lawsuit that could impact the future of college football. The Miami Hurricanes are being sued by the University of Wisconsin for tampering. No, this is not the NFL. No, this is not the NBA. This is college football. Defensive back Xavier Lucas, who wanted to play for the Hurricanes. Again, I am not a lawyer. I only play one on a podcast. From what I've read, he wanted to come to Miami. But Wisconsin was making it unbelievably difficult for him. He claims they would not file the transfer paperwork that was required. So he just packed his things and left and headed on down to the Sunshine State. So, this is one of those topics where I will keep you updated. But again, I will tread lightly because one of my teams is involved. And then this news just came through a few hours ago. And we've been waiting for this shoe to drop. Because the Pac-12 has been trying desperately to get back into play with the big boys in college football. They held on by a thread with Washington State and Oregon State being the two lone members left after the Big 12 and the ACC and the Big 10 and everybody poached all the big-time programs, Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA, among others, of course. Well, now they might finally qualify again as a legitimate top-level conference, as they are now in final negotiations with Texas State. Texas State would become the 8th Pac-12 football member. And that's how many you need to be considered a legitimate conference in the eyes of the NCAA. Now, they also have Gonzaga in the fold, but that is for basketball only. Does make the Pac-12 much more attractive, again, especially for basketball. But they needed that 8th member for football, and now it looks like they've got it in Texas State, and they have to do this quickly because the buyout for Texas State doubles in their old conference on July the 1st. So that invitation has to come from the Pac-12 within the next week. Now, the good thing for the Pac-12 on top of this news is that they have been able to extend their media rights deal with CBS Sports for basketball and football through 2030, 2031. And as I mentioned, you have Gonzaga now committed basketball, not football. Obviously, there is no football program at Gonzaga. Makes the Pac-12 much more desirable overall. And now again with Texas State potentially joining, that makes the stakes higher for what you would get out of the Pac-12 when it comes to the playoffs. Now, the College Football Playoff Board will have to consider the Pac-12 champion. No, they don't have to give them a bid. But if somebody dominates the Pac-12 now that they are back to being a legitimate football conference, they will have to consider an undefeated Pac-12 champion for their ever-expanding playoff field. All right, so let's move on to Major League Baseball, as we are hitting the halfway point in the season. Things are getting a little bit interesting. You've had some shifts in the National League East. Of course, the Mets not having a good couple weeks here. They have ceded the top spot in the NL East to the Phillies. They can blame the Atlanta Braves. And here's the thing. If it wasn't for the fact that they can beat up on the New York Mets, the Atlanta Braves would be out of it. And they probably are still technically out of it. And they would be looking to sell here over the next month as we head to the trade deadline at the end of July. To make matters worse for the Braves, although again, they can beat up on the Mets, which is a good thing for all of us who can't stand New York sports and their obnoxious, arrogant fans. And yes, I fully admit they have the best sports talk radio in the country, but their fans are a bunch of arrogant pinheads. So anytime the Mets and the Yankees go on the downward spiral like they are right now, I love it. But the Braves, they've still got another game or two here, I believe, against the Mets this week. Again, taping here Wednesday night, June the 25th. This will drop early Thursday morning, June the 26th. The Braves still need to start considering what they're going to do this year in terms of selling off assets, because now they've lost their best pitcher. Chris Sale is headed to the 15-day IL with a fractured rib cage, and that's going to take a while to heal up. So now the Braves don't have their top starter. They're still well below 500 even again as they beat up on the Mets. Are the Braves going to be sellers here over the next 3 weeks or so before we get to the trade deadline? Another significant injury on the American League side of things. Baltimore's Adley Rutschman, their catcher, young catcher, one of the cornerstones, building blocks of what they're trying to accomplish. Although you wonder with the Orioles what the end game is. They had a shot the last 2 seasons with this young core of players. They got to the playoffs and failed miserably. Now this year they're not even going to come close. They're not even going to sniff the playoffs. The front office has already taken responsibility for the fact that they did not do a good enough job of getting them a decent group of pitchers. And you could say that about almost the entire league right now with how the emphasis on starting pitching has shifted and changed. We've seen now Corbin Burnes. We talked about this last week. Corbin Burnes, one of the big off-season signings. Probably a couple weeks ago we talked about this. But this was a target for my Cubs. And thank goodness they did not pull the trigger on this. These big-time, big payroll pitchers are having a hard time staying healthy. Now, you do have exceptions to the rule, of course. He looks like he is going to be a 2-time Cy Young Award winner in the American League. That is Tarik Skubal, looking tremendous right now. Fingers crossed for the Tigers. But we're seeing Paul Skeens struggle a little bit. Today he had a rough outing against the Brewers. And he's not getting any kind of support from his teammates in terms of their offensive output. People are still talking about him winning the Cy Young, which I find ridiculous, because the analytics geeks say, wins don't matter anymore. Wins just don't matter. Shut up, kiss my ass, and stop destroying the game that I grew up with. You have destroyed baseball with your stats. I keep hearing these every day. It seems like I hear a new ridiculous stat. You know, what's next? Batting average when 3 hot dogs are consumed pre-game. I mean, this is literally how stupid this is getting with these statistics, and how the analytics geeks force them on the managers, force them on the front offices of these teams. And now we're seeing with the Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani comes back, And now he will only pitch 1 inning at a time. That's it. 1 inning at a time. Because they're scared to death to lose him again to another significant arm injury. I can't blame them. But at the same time, why even risk it? So we've got our injury updates. Just for fun. Just to lighten the mood a little bit here. The Mets have signed. Ready, kids? The Mets have signed Dickie Lovelady. And I am not kidding you. That is not a made-up name. That is not a porn name. That is not an adult entertainment name. Now, from what I heard last night, this guy pitched. Again, the Braves and the Mets are going at it right now. This guy pitched for the Mets last night, did not do well. But he didn't really have any level of self-awareness here. Where initially when he signed and they asked him, well, do you want us to call you Richard or Rick or what? He says, no, you can call me Dickie. All my friends call me Dickie. And then I think he realized after everybody for a full day on social media and all through the sports talk shows made fun of him, I guess he kind of went back and said to the Mets, no, in promotional materials, go ahead and refer to me as Richard. Ha! Little too late, buddy. The genie is already out of the bottle. The Dickie is already out of the bottle. Now, of course, we have our 2 weekly situations that we are monitoring. First and foremost, that would be the Colorado Rockies as they try to take over from last year's Chicago White Sox in their quest for futility. Now, they have not played yet tonight. This is through Tuesday, June the 24th. The Rockies are 18-61, a winning percentage of 228. They are on a pace to go 37-125, which would indeed set the modern day record for worst team, basically, ever. And we all know your Uncle Dave's rooting for that. He doesn't want the White Sox to hold that title for any longer than they have to. Then we have, of course, Aaron Judge. This one's starting to fade, and it'll probably go away here in the next couple of weeks once we hit the All-Star break, and we'll switch over to 300 hitters. How many 300 hitters we're on pace for in all of Major League Baseball? Your Uncle Dave and I like to keep track of that. Another example of how the analytics geeks have ruined the game. We don't care about batting average anymore. It doesn't matter. So you're going to dismiss Rod Carew and dismiss Tony Gwynn and dismiss George Brett and dismiss Bill Madlock. Jackasses. But Aaron Judge starting to fade again a little bit in his quest for the Triple Crown. Right now, has not played tonight again. Aaron Judge hitting .364 with 28 home runs and 62 RBI. Batting average still tops in the American League and all of baseball. Home runs, second in the American League and second in all of baseball. RBI is really where he's starting to struggle. He is second still in the American League, but now has dropped to 6th in all of Major League Baseball. Now, the man who is really messing up his quest in the American League for the Triple Crown is, yes, Seattle catcher slash DH Cal Raleigh. So we have to acknowledge Cal Raleigh. This past week, most home runs by a catcher before the All-Star game ever. Now, when he broke the record, which was held previously by Johnny Bench, Cal Raleigh hit his 29th home run in his 73rd game. Johnny Bench took 87 games to get to the previous mark. And right now, we're still a couple weeks out from the All-Star game. Cal Raleigh is now up to 32 home runs. So he's obliterating that mark. Now, I have problems with this, though. Of course I do. I'm the Maestro. I have problems with everything. I got a lot of problems with you people. It's time for the airing of grievances. Cal Raleigh, this, as opposed to our initial discussion at the top of the podcast about the Thunder's championship, this might need an asterisk. No, he's not cheating. He's not taking performance-enhancing drugs. But here's the thing. Johnny Bench played catcher every day. There was no DH in the National League. Okay, kids? Keep that in mind. Because Cal Raleigh splits time. They have a platoon system in Seattle. He's got another catcher where they will switch off between DH and catcher. So Cal Raleigh's only catching about half of these games. And it puts a lot more wear and tear on your body and wears you down if you play catcher almost every day. Now, maybe you guys know something I don't. Maybe Johnny Bench played sometimes at first base. I don't remember that. I grew up with the big red machine and Johnny Bench. But still, even if he was playing first base on occasion, which I don't think he was, still out in the field playing, fielding, or Cal Raleigh is just DHing half the time. So I do have kind of an issue with this, where Cal Raleigh gets credit for breaking Johnny Bench's record, but I don't think it's an apples-to-apples comparison. I will still congratulate Cal Raleigh nonetheless. Now, of course, we move on to our teams. We mentioned the White Sox a few minutes ago. They won today. So, they are 26-55. They're still dead last in the American League Central. 24 and a half games behind the Detroit Tigers. Meanwhile, my Chicago Cubs are starting to struggle. And I'm telling you, I could see it coming. The Cubs are trying to take the opposite tack of some of these teams we just talked about with the big name pitchers, with the injuries. The Cubs have been trying to keep the payroll for their pitching staff reasonable. They did not go out and shell out $30, $35, $40 million for a pitcher. I believe Jameson Taillon is still the highest paid pitcher in the rotation, somewhere around $17 million. give or take. And you know why now. The problem is, it's a very, very fine line. It's a high wire act. And what the Cubs are dealing with right now is they don't have enough pitching. Now, Shota Imanaga is supposed to be coming back here in the next few days. That will help out a lot. But there's only so much you can do with Matthew Boyd and with Colin Ray and Tyone. And they just had to send the young kid Brown down because he was awful. Horton, the other young pitcher, has been a little bit better, but it's just not enough for a team that has World Series aspirations. So yes, the Cubs are struggling right now. That nice lead they had just a few weeks ago. Hell, a week ago. A week ago, kids, on this podcast, at this time, the Cubs were 45-28, and they were 6.5 games up on the Milwaukee Brewers. Well, now today the Brewers won. Cubs have not played yet, but they have been struggling against the Cardinals. Another team in the NL Central breathing down their neck. So now, compare and contrast last week, 6.5 games up on Milwaukee, 45-28. Now, 46-33. And that lead has shrunk to 2 games. 2 games up on the Milwaukee Brewers right now. The Cubs will give you an ulcer. Trust me, I know. The offense is doing okay. It's slowed down a little bit, but again, it's the pitching. And going back, by the way, to the 300 hitter discussion, it would be nice. I can't remember the last time the Cubs had a 300 hitter. I always look at this in the Cubs lineup. Cubs don't even have anybody hitting 290 right now. Nico Horner, Kyle Tucker are in the 280s. You need that guy who can hit 315, 320, who can reliably get on base. And I'm not just talking about taking walks. So, yeah, the Cubs are starting to scuffle a little bit. Let's hope they bounce back tonight against the Cardinals. Otherwise, it's going to be really ugly. I have a feeling when we do our next update in 7 days. But yeah, the big news was this past weekend, Sammy Sosa returned to Wrigley Field for the first time in over 20 years. All is forgiven. Heroes welcome. Everybody loves Sammy again. And that's good. I still have my questions about why we are blackballing the PED and steroid users like we are. Baseball is such a bizarre, weird, insular group of people, the writers, the owners, the people in charge in the front office. I don't understand sometimes what they're thinking. I mentioned a couple names earlier in Scott Rowland and Todd Helton in the Baseball Hall of Fame, ahead of Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Andy Pettitte. If you want to bring in politics, Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling can't get in because of his politics. And the writers didn't like him. What kind of fucking horseshit is that? You really think Todd Helton and Scott Rowland represent the history of baseball more than those gentlemen I just mentioned? And now we still have to wait a couple years for finally, maybe, possibly, to get Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame after he's dead. Baseball will do everything they possibly can to destroy themselves. Then finally, before we move on, your Uncle Dave and I, over the past 6 months or so, have been very vague about this because we weren't getting the information. I don't think a lot of baseball fans were getting the information. What was going on with Las Vegas? Did they get the funding approved? Is the stadium moving forward? Are the A's finally going to have a permanent home? Well, the answer finally is yes. Again, we didn't really get this information. We weren't privy to this information. Somehow just kind of slid by. But I guess all the funding is in place. It better be, because they've broken ground now on the A's stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. 2028 is the date we're looking at. Opening day 2028. I would assume they would put them, unless there's some kind of a weird delay where they have to push it back a couple weeks. But I would think opening day 2028 they would have a huge opening ceremony, festivities in Vegas for the Vegas A's. But of course, for the next 2 years and the rest of this year, they will be playing in Sacramento. All right, real quick. I'm still on my WNBA kinda sorta embargo. If the players are going to try to destroy their own league, why should I watch and help them? My love affair with the WNBA is almost pretty much over. I did watch a little over half of the Fever game this past weekend. I can't even remember who they were playing. Caitlin Clark sucks right now. She is awful. She is cold as ice. And they're scuffling a little bit right now. They are what they deserve to be, a 500 team. They're 7-7. Aaliyah Boston is carrying them. Good for her. Because I've told you guys last season when I started watching the WNBA, I thought she was more concerned about her hair color than she was about playing basketball. And after a month or so, you'll notice, last year you would have noticed that she stopped dyeing her hair and started playing better basketball because she started focusing on her career and not, oh, should I have white and red braids in my hair? And ever since she made that decision, and I know, the Maestro blaming somebody's hairstyle for whether they were playing good or bad. I'm telling you, ever since that was an outward signal that she was finally taking her career in the WNBA seriously, and ever since then, she has been dynamic, and she gets better and better. This is her third year, I believe, and she's carrying the team right now as Caitlin Clark struggles, and I cannot rip on Kelsey Mitchell anymore because she's starting to play better as well. But I was validated a little bit by a roster move here today as the Fever waive Dewana Bonner. I have been critical of all the offseason moves, most of them, that the Fever made. They needed to get bigger. They needed to give Aaliyah Boston somebody in the middle. And they did not do that. And the people they brought in Of course, everybody loves Sophie Cunningham right now because she's hot and she's kind of like their enforcer when it comes to people who screw with Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham will get in their face. So we all love her for that. And again, did I mention she's hot? But a lot of these other players that they brought in, and DeWanna Bonner was number one. I know the numbers, one of the all-time scorers in WNBA history, but literally, you looked at her, she didn't fit in. She admitted as much today when they waived her, released her. And she looks like you could blow her over with a ceiling fan. I don't know how this woman can compete in a physical game when she looks like she weighs about 75 pounds. So it was like a mutual, amicable parting of the ways. She will try to latch on with somebody else, and I'm sure she will play much better for whoever it is that ends up picking her up. But otherwise, in the WNBA, who really cares? Seriously, I have turned on the WNBA 180 degrees ever since this whole hatred for Caitlin Clark has gotten to the point where, just like most other things in this pathetic, piss-poor world we live in, where all the haters win. All the winebags, all the crybabies win. And the people who try to do things the right way, through hard work, through skill, through aptitude, they get beaten down. And we're seeing it in the WNBA, just like we see it in so many other places in our country and in our culture. That's why I will not watch this crap anymore until we start seeing some contrition on the part of some of these players for them to realize that, number one, they're all in it together. So maybe, number two, they shouldn't beat the crap out of Caitlin Clark and start throwing words like white privilege around. Because she's earned it. And she's a hell of a lot better player than Angel fucking Reese will ever be. Yes, I know Angel Reese just had probably her best game ever the other night. But before that, the one before that, she laid a mammoth turd. Alright. Time to move on to NASCAR and racing. As we are now heading towards the last 2 months of the regular season. No more breaks, no more weeks off. We just saw the final broadcast on Prime Video of the season at Pocono. Now everything shifts over to TNT. So keep track, kids. And then eventually it's going to shift to USA and NBC. And then, of course, because we're moving to TNT, we're starting this stupid in-season challenge. The bracket, yes, I can't believe I'm saying this, the bracket for the in-season challenge is now set as we head to Atlanta. We can't call it Atlanta Motor Speedway anymore, though, of course. What is it, Autotech Speedway now? Something like that. And so you've got these ridiculous brackets. Yes, they're trying to turn this part of the season into something like March Madness. And then, of course, the end of the season is always tried to be more like the NFL. This is a sport that can't figure out what it wants to be. The only thing it knows that it wants to do is alienate its old school fans who just want Straight points determine a champion. Let him fight it out in the pits. Rubbing is racing, but no. Again, the woke PC idiots have even taken over NASCAR, and we'll talk more about that, yes, at the end of the show. You know what that means. So, to recap, Prime Video now over. TNT will now cover the races here for the next, 5 weeks, 6 weeks roughly? And this will all be the in-season challenge, where two drivers will face off head-to-head every week, all the way through, I believe, the Brickyard in Indianapolis, until we crown a champion of the in-season challenge. Now, I can't do this as well as Dave, but I'm going to give it a shot. The horn of disgrace for NASCAR. Now, Pocono. Pocono was an interesting race. Your Uncle Dave and I have a conspiracy theory about this. When do we not have conspiracy theories? It sure as hell looked like Denny Hamlin could have won that race. Of course, the Conquistador and I are a little bitter because we both picked Denny Hamlin to win at Pocono. He won the first stage. He had the fastest lap. But Chase Briscoe ends up getting the victory, his first win, with Joe Gibbs Racing, which now locks him into the playoffs. And this is where your Uncle Dave and I, watching that race, are thinking, why isn't Denny Hamlin pushing Chase Briscoe more, as Denny Hamlin finished second? Was it team orders? Are we dealing with some F1 bullshit here, where Denny Hamlin was told to back off so we can lock in our third Gibbs driver out of the four-driver team? Lock that third guy into the playoffs? Sorry, Ty Gibbs. Not a great year for you. But Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, and now Chase Briscoe from Joe Gibbs Racing have qualified for the playoffs. I don't like it. I don't like it. Denny Hamlin should have won that race. But as it is, Chase Briscoe ends up being the 11th different driver of 2025 to win a Cup race, which means as of right now, only 5 drivers will get in on points. Dale Jr., Dale Earnhardt Jr. won as a crew chief. Yay! Whatever. We reported last week that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was going to be the crew chief for Connor Zilisch at Pocono in the Xfinity Series, and of course, Connor Zilisch won. So congratulations to Dale Earnhardt Jr. Is there nothing this man can't do? Oh wait, he can't win a Cup Series championship. Ha! Forgot about that. Then we have a deal in the works between NASCAR and Bowman Gray Stadium. Of course, Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Everybody was extremely happy when racing came back to Bowman Gray Stadium. Now, there's some money changing hands behind the scenes, I guess, where Winston-Salem, the community, will pony up half of the $1 million needed for a new scoreboard at Bowman Gray Stadium. And as a result, as part of that deal, NASCAR is getting close to agreeing to a 5-year deal with Bowman Gray Stadium, where they will host at least one NASCAR race every year at Bowman Gray. Now, that's not guaranteed to be a Cup race. It could be Xfinity. It could be Truck Series. But for 5 years, and again, this scoreboard situation seems to be a big cog in the agreement. But a 5-year deal where NASCAR will run at least one event, let's put it that way, every year at Bowman Gray Stadium. And that leads us to our picks for this weekend's race. We have got a Saturday night race. The Quaker State 400 in Atlanta. Yeah, like I said, they sold the naming rights. I don't care. It's Atlanta. So again, the Quaker State 400 from Atlanta this coming Saturday night, June the 28th, race number 18 of the regular season, the first round on TNT of the in-season challenge. 7 of our 8 expert panelists have their picks in. Sam, Doug, and I are going with Ryan Blaney. Dave is going with Kyle Larson. Bill is taking Chase Elliott. Jen is taking Joey Logano. And Aaron is going with Austin Cindric. A very, very solid group of picks there. Of course, I prefer mine. I always do. Unless it's Daniel fucking Suarez a couple weeks ago. So to recap, Kev, Sam, Doug take Ryan Blaney. Dave takes Kyle Larson. Bill, Chase Elliott. Jen, Joey Logano. Aaron, Austin Cindric. Nick's pick still pending. He has about 3 hours to go before the hammer will come down on him. And he's always a pain in the ass. He's always the last one in. Drives me crazy. And it's not just NASCAR. It's baseball. It's football. Ugh. But I love our 8 panelists. We've been together for a long, long time with no changes, so I will bite my tongue. Hopefully Nick is not listening to the podcast. All right, I have a couple Clint Eastwood badasses of the week. Let's start off with Tom Brady, the GOAT, when it comes to NFL quarterbacks. Now, the last few years they've made a huge deal about this, and again, it's New York, so it's always a big deal because it's New York. This Fanatics Fest that they have in New York every year, where they have all these athletes from all the different sports, and you get the WWE in there, and they pour just an absolute shit ton of money into it. Well, this year they had something called the Fanatics Games, where they had some of the athletes perform in a skills competition against some of the fans. And the athletes, of course, came from varying different backgrounds. Of course, Tom Brady comes from the football. We had UFC people involved. But Tom Brady won the inaugural Fanatics Games. But that's not why he is a Clint Eastwood badass this week. It's because he won $1 million, and then he decided to give $5,000 of that money to each of the 50 fans who participated in the Fanatics games. So that's a pretty cool gesture from the GOAT. And then, of course, the rest of the money goes to charity. Now, my question with this is, and I'm not trying to rain on the parade here, but if you do the math, he's basically donating $750,000 to charity and giving $250,000 to the fans. What's the purpose of that number? My question is, why couldn't you have given $10,000 to the 50 fans and then given $500,000 to charity? Why only $5,000? I know only is an awful word to use because it's free money for these 50 people. But think about it. Why couldn't he have given them $10,000 each? Still would have had $500,000 left over to give to charity. I'm just curious about this. Why didn't he give all the money to the fans? I mean, I get giving some of the money to charity. I do. But I would have liked to have seen a 50-50 split. You know what I mean? It just seems like that would have been right. If you're going to do it right. Maybe he wanted a bigger tax deduction with a bigger donation. And then, of course, my other Clint Eastwood Badass of the Week comes from my beloved Chicago Cubs. And I told everybody coming into this season, Pete Crow Armstrong is going to have a monster year. And your Uncle Dave agreed with me. We're on record. We fucking told you so. PCA, as us Cub fans call him. Of course, the chants are MVPCA at Wrigley right now. Pete Crow Armstrong becomes the fourth fastest player in Major League Baseball history to reach 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases in a season. And the Cubs have got themselves kind of boxed into a corner here, because I know Tom Ricketts doesn't want to spend money. We all know that as Cubs fans. But he's going to have to make a decision with Kyle Tucker. And sooner rather than later, he's going to have to make a decision about Pete Crow Armstrong. And that's not even including Seiya Suzuki. That's not even including Shota Imanaga. Any of those guys go bye-bye, the Cubs faithful will be livid. Myself included. Ricketts is going to have to spend the money. No excuses. There are no excuses other than for him to get up in front of a microphone and say, I'm a tightwad. I don't want to spend the money on the fans. I want to spend the money on me. I'm a tightwad. That's the only thing that he could do. Or at least we could say, at least he's an honest asshole. So once again, your Clint Eastwood Badasses of the Week are Tom Brady and Pete Crow Armstrong. In other sports news, the College World Series. I admit I don't really get into it, especially if the Miami Hurricanes aren't involved. I believe they got knocked out in the regionals. LSU beats Coastal Carolina 2-0. That is the 6th straight College World Series title for the SEC, and it is the 8th overall title for LSU. I do believe that's second only to USC, I want to say. And then in golf, I spent way too much time this past weekend watching a golf tournament that was not one of the 4 majors. The Travelers Championship. I got sucked in on this for 2 reasons. Number one, even with all of the big name golfers playing on the LIV Tour, the leaderboard over the weekend for the Travelers Championship was stellar. I mean, every big name left on the PGA Tour was, it seemed like, in the top 10, top 15 throughout the whole weekend. We're talking Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. Or, of course, talking about the eventual winner, Keegan Bradley. Jason Day was up there. And then, of course, the sad story of Tommy Fleetwood. That's the other reason I wanted to watch this weekend. Number one, outstanding leaderboard, big names. And number 2, I've always liked Tommy Fleetwood. And I was rooting for him as he was trying to win his very first PGA Tour tournament. He has had so many top 10s, so many top 3s in big major PGA Tour events. And this looked like this was going to be finally his breakthrough moment where he was going to finally win his first tour event ever. Now, he's won overseas, but has never won a PGA Tour event. And at the end of the day on Sunday afternoon, Keegan Bradley comes through, captain of the upcoming Ryder Cup team for the U.S. There's some debate about whether he will actually coach and play. But Tommy Fleetwood, I don't want to say he choked it away, but he kind of did. Keegan Bradley wins at 15 under. Tommy Fleetwood finishes in a tie for second at 14 under. And Tommy Fleetwood led most of the day on Sunday. So the story grows for him. I'm still rooting for him. He's got to get that win. He's got to break through here at some point. He's got to. He's better than Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler, that story's over. That story's done. Tommy Fleetwood can still make his mark, whether it's winning a major or finally just getting a win or two on the PGA Tour, in addition to all of the other top 10s, top 3s, top 5s that he's got on his resume. All right, and that leads us into moments of silence. One moment of silence this week in the world of sports. Fred Smith, father of Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. But no, that's not why we're mentioning Fred Smith. Fred Smith used to be a part owner of, wait for it, I'm going to piss people off here, the Washington Redskins. Back when he was part owner, they were the Washington Redskins. Just like the potatoes. So that, of course, leads us into our nominees for the Red Foreman Sports Dumbasses of the Week. I have 4 nominees. You will have to do the work that the Conquistador would normally do. You're going to have to drop me a comment. Let me know which of these 4 you think truly deserves to be this week's Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week. I'm taking a break, by the way, from my last call. I'm trying to tone down the anger a little bit. Although I'm sure on the weekend edition it'll pop right back. But yeah, had another bad experience in the last week on Facebook with more idiots, quote unquote friends, who want to spout off their hatred about politics, whether it's right wing, left wing. Just keep your fucking political opinions to yourself, people. You get 1 vote. You deserve 1 vote. You don't deserve to badger and cajole and harass other people because you hate the president or you love the president. Nobody gives 2 fucks. Vote for him, don't vote for him. Nobody cares but you. So like I said, no last call this week. I'm not going to chime in any more than I have to with the anger and the vitriol. So with that being said, let's have some fun with the dumbasses of the week. And our first 2 come from the world of the WNBA. First up, now, change.org. This is another example of what I was just ranting about. Change.org is one of these stupid political websites, left-wing political dipshits, who basically want to destroy the world. Rework the world so that white men are all dead and the alphabet mafia takes over everything, along with the groups of their choosing. So, of course, change.org, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever has taken on this cult status as the Indiana Fever's enforcer protecting Caitlin Clark. But of course, change.org doesn't like that. So change.org, somebody posted a petition on change.org. Direct quote, this is what it's called. Remove Sophie Cunningham from the WNBA for misconduct. Because God help us, we've got to let everybody in the WNBA beat the hell out of Caitlin Clark. And we're going to show that dumb white girl she doesn't belong. That's the sick kind of thinking we're dealing with here. But then, it's not just social media and websites that are, again, trying to destroy the WNBA when it really has a good thing going. But I think you're starting to see chinks in the armor. I think you're starting to see cracks in the foundation already because these idiots want to destroy something that could have been really good and really popular. Yeah, I'm talking about you, ESPN. Disney and ESPN, and your Uncle Dave says it about Disney all the time, Disney will figure out new and exciting ways to fuck everything up, to go woke beyond all belief. I had some respect for Rebecca Lobo, one of the legends of women's basketball. And she, of course, was doing a broadcast here recently on ESPN. I do believe it was a Fever game, but that doesn't matter. And I'm going to paraphrase part of this. There was a discussion going on between her and her broadcast partner, I believe it was Pam Ward, where they were having a disagreement, or Rebecca Lobo was disagreeing with somebody and said basically, but the fact that we can agree to disagree, that's what makes America great, right, Pam? And the part where she said, and the direct quote is, "That's what makes America great," pissed off her broadcast partner to the point where she got the silent treatment on air. Rebecca Lobo did. And then she had to awkwardly fill the silence by saying, "Oh, gee, I guess I should rephrase that, shouldn't I?" You can't even say the words. That's what makes America great on woke ESPN. Otherwise, you get the cold shoulder, you get frozen out, because that's not the way ESPN operates. ESPN is woke. And for you to even say something that even remotely sounds like MAGA, make America great again, for you to even come close to saying that is a big time fucking no-no with ESPN. I remember when I used to love ESPN, and now I can't stand it. Bunch of fucking woke fucktards. And speaking of woke fucktards, let's move on to NASCAR. I kind of alluded to this earlier. Now, we all know, we discussed this on the podcast, that Carson Hocevar got in trouble, fined, and sent to sensitivity training for saying that Mexico City was a shithole. So much for free speech, right? And I made the point last week, I do believe, that if he'd said that about Pocono, he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. Maybe gotten a talking to. But he wouldn't, sure as hell wouldn't have had to go to sensitivity training. Because how dare you say something bad about Mexico? Mexico's better than the U.S. Don't you know that? Makes me want to puke. Makes me want to puke. That we're not allowed to talk up our country, but we have to kiss the ass of every other country in this world. We have to let protesters, baseball players, whoever, parade around with Mexican flags and Venezuelan flags and flags from Puerto Rico and Cuba. Then go back there. If you loved it so much there, go back there. But if you're going to sit here in this country and make money in this country, then fucking hold an American flag or go back. Make up your mind. And I don't think that's too much to ask. Make up your mind. This is your home now. If you legally immigrated to this country, this is your home now. You can be proudful of your heritage. But for you to piss on this country, burn the flag, raise the flags of other countries, then go the hell back there, if it's so much better. And so that takes us back to NASCAR. And so the Carson Hocevar incident was dealt with. But then NASCAR And Hayek Motorsports, Hayek Racing, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s team, out and out fired their spotter, Tab Boyd, for basically tweeting roughly the same things that Carson Hocevar did. So if you're a driver, you still get slapped down by the woke police. But drivers are important. So they still might not get as severe a penalty as a spotter, an insignificant speck, fly-on-the-wall spotter. Will can his ass for saying he was in fear when he was in Mexico City. He was scared to leave his hotel room. We'll fire his ass for saying that. Are you kidding me? What the hell kind of world are we living in? If I go somewhere else in the United States, I once went here, story from a long time ago. I once went to a place kind of sort of outside Indianapolis called Lebanon, Indiana. Not Lebanon, the country. Lebanon, Indiana. And I'll tell you right now, it was a shithole. The Holiday Inn I stayed in was a shithole. It was disgusting. But I can say that. And nobody can do anything about it. Lebanon, Indiana can't sue me. Holiday Inn can't sue me because I'm giving you my honest opinion that it was a shithole. It's called freedom of speech. But again, I guess those rules don't apply when you're dealing with Mexico City. So NASCAR, your dumbasses, along with Hayek Racing, for firing Tab Boyd for exercising his rights to free speech. And then finally, this one's way too easy and it's way too disturbing. But just last night, Major League Baseball had to ban a 22-year-old fan, south side of Chicago White Sox fan by all accounts. I'm not picking on the White Sox. They didn't do anything wrong here. They actually took care of matters before MLB had to step in. I'm sure you people have heard about this by now. Ketel Marte, star player for the Arizona Diamondbacks, was in town. Somebody yelled something. This 22-year-old fan yelled something at him involving his mother. His mother was killed in an automobile accident, I believe about 8 years ago. And however it was said, whatever was said, broke this young man down. I mean, he's in his 30s, but still, to me, he's a young man. Broke him down. He was in tears. Again, his mother died in a car crash roughly 8 years ago. And this moron, this 22-year-old moron, had to yell something about Ketel Marte's mother to him. Now, there are some of you out there who might say, okay, the 22-year-old fan is wrong, but maybe Ketel Marte needs to grow some thicker skin and not react like that and be a stronger person. In this case, I am not siding with you. There are times when I would, not in this case. Because you can't imagine what it's like to be in his shoes, and we still don't know. I have not seen the details of what was said and how heinous it could have been, how egregious and nasty it could have been. I used to have problems with fans. This is why I don't go to live sporting events anymore. It's because fans are rude and obnoxious and stupid. Again, this is why I'm not doing last call, because I'm just fed up with people. And it's all because of the phones and the social media. Everybody thinks they're an influencer now. Everybody thinks they're a rock star. Everybody thinks their opinion matters more than everybody else's, which is not even close to the truth. I mentioned I watched a lot of golf this weekend. I got to listen to these morons at the Travelers Championship screaming Baba Booey. If I was standing next to somebody this is again why I don't go. If I was standing next to somebody who did that, I would turn around and punch him in the face. Show some respect, show some class, show some maturity. And that's something I've had to tell a lot of people about here lately. Stop acting immature. Be better for our kids. Be better for the future generations. I'm not talking about going woke. But sure as hell aren't setting a great example when you do stuff like this. So this fan has been banned indefinitely from all Major League Baseball stadiums, arenas, ballparks. So recapping your 4 nominees for this week's Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week Award. Change.org and their stupid Sophie Cunningham petition. ESPN and Rebecca Lobo for the cringe-inducing apology for saying that's what makes America great. NASCAR and Hayek Racing for firing Tab Boyd for his tweets about Mexico City, and the 22-year-old fan who yelled something disturbing at Kettle Marte about his mother, who, again, in context, died in a car crash 8 years ago. So you guys are going to have to help out. You're going to have to tell me which of these dumbasses is the winner. If I had to choose, I would probably pick NASCAR. I would probably pick NASCAR because I get so infuriated with these overt attempts to censor people from expressing their opinion. You might not like their opinions. I sure as hell don't like the opinions of a lot of people in this world. But that doesn't mean that I have the right to censor them. I can choose not to follow them. I can change the channel on the TV or on the radio. But those opinions are still out there. That is their right. Now, they don't have the right to bully somebody else, scream and yell in somebody's face because they don't like the counter argument. I'm just a huge free speech guy. A huge free speech guy. That's why I do this podcast with Dave. This is our way to vent. This is our way to get, yes, our opinions out. Agree, disagree, that's your right. But it's our right to express them as we see fit, with all the cursing and the swearing and the politically incorrect stuff we can throw at you each and every week. So, yes, my dumbass for the week is NASCAR and Hayek for firing Tab Boyd. All right, weekend edition still will be at its usual time this coming Saturday morning, which of course will be June the 28th, your Saturday morning hangover cure. I will be solo, but you will still have a great time. I guarantee it. I am going to review the season 2 of Tires. Shane Gillis, of course, his show on Netflix. I will review the new album from the Doobie Brothers, Walk This Road. I will have story time looking back at what I think is Kevin Smith's greatest movie, Mallrats. A new show that I have started streaming that I will discuss is called The Waterfront, also on Netflix. We might have a couple other little treats for you. In addition to, yes, Last Call will return for the weekend edition. You will have dumbasses again to choose from. Your favorite politically incorrect pop culture commentary podcast this Saturday morning, the Sports Frenzy 2.0 Weekend Edition, with me, your Uncle Kev, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. But until then, take care of yourselves, enjoy the NBA draft, enjoy the NHL draft. We will do this in a few days, again with pop culture and music and movies, TV and streaming. If for some reason that's not your thing, we will do the sports all over again in 1 week, 7 short days, and we will be back to do this all again with you. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. We will talk again very, very soon, kids. Have a great evening. Peace out.